literally obliterating the other side. Mixed messaging from the White House. Donald Trump says he's not looking for a ceasefire, winding down the war against Iran. And at the same time, the Pentagon asks for more money for the war and deploys more troops. Iran's foreign minister calls Japanese leaders, saying he's prepared to help Japan's ships transit the Strait of Hormuz. But Israel attacked Beirut overnight. More than 1,000 people have been killed in Lebanon in the first 3 weeks of the war. US President Donald Trump says he's considering winding down military operations in Iran, but he's also rejected the idea of a ceasefire. He says Washington has nearly achieved all of its objectives. At the same time, the Pentagon is preparing to send more Marines and 3 additional warships to the region. It's also asked for billions more dollars to keep the war effort going.
Oh,
I think we've won. We've knocked out their Navy, their Air Force, we've knocked out their anti-aircraft, we've knocked out everything. We're roving free. From a military standpoint, all they're doing is clogging up the strait. But from a military standpoint, they're finished. The day after the Japanese Prime Minister paid a visit to the White House, Iran's foreign minister says Iran can help Japanese ships sail through the Strait of Hormuz. He said only countries attacking Iran are facing restrictions. And the United States has waived sanctions on some Iranian oil in a bid to relieve pressure on the world's energy supply. Brent crude is trading at more than $110 a barrel. We're going to be live from Baghdad, Beirut, Dubai, and Tehran. That's where we're going to begin with Mohammed Bob. Diplomatic push. Well, let's talk about the diplomatic efforts that are being made here. Abbas Araghchi, foreign minister, been making a blitz of phone calls. Who's he been speaking to, and what's he been saying?
Yes, Rob, the most outstanding communication he did over the last couple of days was with his Japanese counterpart, and that also came before the Japanese Prime Minister showed up in the White House, met with President Trump. And the Japanese, they're talking about their support to the American campaign against Iran and condemning Iran for its actions in the Gulf region and so on. So the Iranian foreign minister is exercising a different counter effort to counterbalance that American push for Japan and other countries to join the fight, because Americans have been asking those countries to send warships, so the Iranians are much concerned about that. So he, in a phone call with in a phone interview with Kyodo News Agency, he said that Iran is extending a hand to Japan and it is ready to allow Japanese vessels to cross safely through the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, Iran says it is in complete control of that strait. It's not closing it, but it is using what it calls a smart control of the Strait of Hormuz. So they can allow ships that they want to allow, countries they consider friendly, and they consider Japan one of those countries, as long as it is not joining the campaign against Iran. So there is that usage of leverage in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is showing that it is really in control and it can allow countries to pass it at once, and has always been saying that the Strait of Hormuz is closed only to the Americans and their allies in this war against Iran. He also, by the way, reiterated the Iranian stance towards a ceasefire and the end of the war. He said Iran is not looking for a ceasefire, but it is looking for a complete end to the war. And he said that several countries have approached Iran for negotiations and mediation, And he said that Iran is open for negotiations and mediation, but on the condition that this is going to lead to a complete end to the war and not lead to a repetition of what's happening right now, the aggression against Iran.
Yeah, meanwhile, of course, people are trying to celebrate their Nowruz New Year and Eid, but the bombings are continuing. What is life like?
Well, we can say that it is different from the previous years. It is calm and people are cautious. We have seen on Tuesday that people didn't show up in the streets after the government gave them instructions against that. The government is fearing problems of security and so on, law and order there. So people didn't do that annual celebration, striking fires in the streets and dancing and so on. And also today, the Eid al-Fitr prayer has been organized as usual, but the absence of the Supreme Leader has been very remarkable because probably this is the first time in years that he can show up and lead the prayer. And with Eid al-Fitr, usually it's an occasion for him to call for national unity, to remind the Iranians of the need to support Palestine and also talk about regional relationships and so on. So he's not there. He sent someone to represent him. That's a very remarkable situation that differs this Eid from the previous ones. People are meeting indoors. Mostly, we didn't see a lot of presence in the streets. People are grieving because many have died, not only in this war, but also in January during the protests. And that's the mood in which the Iranians are marking these two Eids now.
Mohammed Balder in the Iranian capital, Brian, thank you very much indeed. As we've been reporting, Donald Trump says the U.S. is, quote, getting very close to meeting
due to, again, Iranian action, not because of American action. So that has to be addressed. Having said that, Iranian oil shipped to China is still able to go through, as well as liquid petroleum gas to India. And that is important to note. But yes, to your question, Scott Besson's comment is trying to alleviate the upward pressure. My issue is that none of this will help, and oil is going to continue to spike. We're going to see oil at 150, if not more.
Jim, I want to talk about energy diplomacy here, because this is, the crucial point. Iran, and Mohsen has said this very eloquently, they were in negotiations. They were there at the table. There was a deal that was already there. It just needed, to be reshaped for the modern day. We signed in 2015 the so-called Iran nuclear deal. No one now can trust the...
Last year for Kurds in Syria, they already celebrated this Nowruz, this very important national day for them, more freely, we can say, but it was not with this official recognition. In Damascus, celebrations began last night. Many families and children and women celebrated this national day. They went up the mountain of Kasyoun in order to light the traditional fire. It is a symbol.
සිරියාවේ ජාතික දිනය සමරන මොහොතේදී සිරියාවට ප්‍රහාරයක් එල්ල වෙනවා ඊශ්‍රායලයට.
Syria and in Damascus in Ukraine yesterday, I had the chance to meet families that were celebrating the Kurdish Nowruz. They were dressed in colorful dresses with children. There were slogans about freedom as well. And many told me that it was the first time that they truly feel free to express their culture. Several people as well recalled when it was very difficult for them to celebrate Nowruz under Assad regime, where it was happening in very tight and restricted celebrations.
And Dana, declaring the Persian New Year a national holiday is just one measure decreed by al-Shura. What have the changes meant for Syria's Kurdish community on a political level?
Yes, behind these celebrations and the joy of Kurdish people of yesterday of the Nowruz, many have also stressed the importance of their rights, especially the linguistic and administrative rights. They stated that it should be guaranteed in the constitution, not only by decree. So this marks not only the first official celebration of Nowruz, but also it is a strong message and affirmation of Kurdish identity in Syria. President al-Shara has stated in the decree and recognized Kurdish as an authentic component of the nation, and it allows Kurdish language education as well to be legal, and it restored as well citizenship to tens of thousands of people. But for many Kurds, they are insisting that these rights would be stated in the constitution and not only by decree, because they fear that this would change by another decree.
Right, we'll continue to follow the situation for Syria's Kurds. Dana, thank you so much, as always, for those updates. That's our correspondent, Dana Elbow, is reporting there from Damascus. Well, in order to offset the economic impact of the war in the Middle East, Spain's Prime Minister has announced a series of measures worth some 5 billion euros. They include cuts to gas and fuel taxes that could lower prices by 30 cents at the pump. Jenny Shin and Nick Rushworth have the details.
As the economic effects of the war in Iran ripple across Europe, the Spanish government has unveiled a €5 billion relief plan to cushion its impact.
In these first months, this war in the Middle East will cost Spain €5 billion that we could be allocating to scholarships, healthcare, and other long-term care. We're going to allocate this money to protect our productive sector, the self-employed, agriculture, as well as small and medium-sized businesses.
The package of 80 measures in all needs parliamentary approval. They include reducing VAT on electricity and natural gas bills from 21% to 10%, and cutting taxation on petrol and diesel, which could reduce the price at the pump by up to 30 cents a litre.
The price of fuel keeps going up and getting more expensive, so anything we can do to help is great.
It would mean getting back to some semblance of the normal life I had before, which was already hard to manage. But of course, with this price hike, expenses are higher, and it's much harder to get by.
Europe's reliance on energy imports has left it exposed to spiraling prices.
Lack of diesel. That standoff comes as the Trump administration continues to impose a fuel blockade on Cuba and has been pressing for a dramatic change in the country's communist government. Well, in an effort to break the ongoing U.S. blockade, a humanitarian convoy has begun arriving in Cuba from more than 33 countries. As Peter O'Brien reports, delegates from Europe and the Americas are arriving by air and by sea.
Boxes of aid arrive in Havana, the first of 20 tons sent by 120 organizations from 33 countries. Activists taking part in the convoy condemned the United States energy embargo, which has tipped Cuba into severe crisis.
As Americans, we show our solidarity with the people of Cuba. Right now, what the Trump administration is doing is very wrong.
Food, medicine, solar panels. More aid is on its way to the island, including by flotilla from Mexico. Since January's embargo, Cuba has been at a standstill and has suffered massive blackouts. The US is pushing for huge reforms to the communist country and for Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel to step down. After these comments from President Donald Trump,
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba.
Diaz-Canel has denied that Cuba's political system is up for grabs and says it's prepared for the worst.
We recognize the possibility of aggression against Cuba, and we have launched a preparation plan to increase our people's defense readiness.
Cuban authorities are trying to exert whatever leverage they have. The AP reports they've refused a request by the US Embassy to import diesel for its generators, as the State Department considers cutting its staff because of the shortage. 11 million residents, meanwhile, pray for a breakthrough in negotiations.
Into what they are saying, creating a larger buffer zone to maintain safety for Israel, where they have troops on the ground. Unfortunately, Hezbollah is also, expanding its operation overnight. We heard that they've accelerated more rockets into northern Israel. More than 50 rockets were fired from somewhere in the south, and this is exactly what the Israelis have launched the ground invasion or ground operation to stop. They have asked, hundreds of thousands of civilians to move from the south of Litani River to go to the north of Litani River, even reaching the famous historical city of Tyre, where, Lebanese pride themselves with this historical city. This is and also a tourist destination, but also thousands of residents had to evacuate from that city because of the advancement of Israeli troops, and worrying that this war is going to last for longer, and people would not be able to go back to their towns and villages for a long time.
Just on that point, Lina, that this war could go on longer, Hezbollah and Israel seem committed to that. Is there any ability for the Lebanese government, Prime Minister, to cut through?
Well, I think the government has been trying to make all the right statements, call for the right initiatives, but the problem is that they don't have the power to stop Hezbollah from what they're doing. Hezbollah launched this operation on Israel, driving this country into war without, consent from the government. The government immediately condemned, banned Hezbollah's military operation, even called on direct negotiations with the Israelis to stop it, said that they would promise the Lebanese army to take control of the south, something that has been agreed on in the last war that prompted the ceasefire in 2024, but still they couldn't stop Hezbollah from launching these rockets, dragging the country into war. And frankly, the Hezbollah leadership are out and about, speaking, publicly that they are there to support Iran. So they're not anymore defending Lebanon or Lebanese rights, but basically defending their ally Iran, especially after the killing and assassination of their supreme leader. And that's what's making people furious about Hezbollah, but even more angry about what Israel is doing in attacking civilians, hitting infrastructure. Over 1,000 now killed, and over 1 million are now displaced. So for the ordinary Lebanese who are affected, Israel will continue as their enemy, as much as they would put blame on Hezbollah to drag them into this war.
Thank you, Lina Sanjab, our Middle East correspondent there in Beirut. And remember, we do have a live page that's been running ever since the war started 4 weeks ago, where you can get all the latest developments, but also there's a lot of analysis there from our teams at Verify. There's lots of information out there which you can't always tell if it's correct or not, so teams working hard to put out the facts of the war. Okay, let's get some of the day's other news now. A jury in California has found that Elon Musk deliberately misled shareholders in the social media company Twitter while he was bidding to buy the company. He'll be liable to damages that could run into billions in a civil suit. Authorities in South Korea say 10 people have been killed and 4 others remain unaccounted for after a massive fire at a car parts plant in the city of Daejeon. 59 other people were injured. Around 200 firefighters were mobilised to put out the blaze, which took 10 hours. Tropical cyclone Narelle is forecast to hit Australia's Northern Territory on Saturday, a day after bringing destructive winds, heavy rain and power outages to the country's northeast coast. Australia's Weather Bureau said the Category 2 storm system is forecast to strengthen during Saturday, bringing winds of up to 185 kilometres per hour. NASA's huge moon rocket has completed its 6-kilometre journey to the launch pad at Cape Canaveral in Florida. The Artemis 2 mission is due to take 4 astronauts around the moon, but there are no plans to land on it for at least another 2 years. Technical problems delayed the first attempt to launch. It's now expected to blast off in early April. It's been 3 months since Australia introduced its world-first ban on social media for under-16s. Just before Christmas, teens were told they were being kicked off things like TikTok, Insta, YouTube and Snapchat. It's a very bold move, one that was criticised by tech companies, but widely welcomed by parents and carers. So 3 months on, how's it working out? Our Australia correspondent Katie Watson reports from Sydney.
Australian children are waking up without access to social media.
Under the age of 16 in this country has officially lost access.
A huge social experiment. Australian teens, the guinea pigs, YouTube Kids, the WhatsApp article, and the whole world watching it.
Iran has reportedly fired 2 ballistic missiles targeting the US-UK military base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, marking a sharp escalation in the conflict. The US has now approved a limited temporary waiver allowing the sale of Iranian oil already at sea as the prices surge amid the ongoing war, with 30-day relief permits only in transit oil and no fresh purchases. Fuel price hike triggers a sharp BJP versus Congress face-off as the BJP says premium fuel prices have been raised despite the situation, while the Congress claims regular petrol and diesel prices will go up after the elections. Ahead of the Bengal elections, Mamata Banerjee announces TMC's 10 pratigyas or pledges as the manifesto sets the tone for the direct face-off with the BJP. Well, today is the 26th second day of the war, and the oil prices have now peaked amid the global energy crisis. In that backdrop, days after UN sanctioning Russian oil, now what we are looking at, for 30 days, the US has now allowed the sanction waiver for the purchase of Iranian oil. But there are two major conditions. One, that the waiver is only for 30 days, and secondly, if the waiver is only for the sale of oil which is stranded at sea. Now this could release millions of barrels of oil into the global markets to ease war-driven disruptions and to the shipping and production at the moment. Well, this is a statement that is now coming in on part of the US authorities. A softening of stance somewhere that doesn't look like, because earlier, when it comes to the purchase of Russian oil, with that waiver that had been given to multiple countries, including back to India, for 30 days, and now when it comes to the Iranian oil that has been stranded at sea, well, this waiver that has now been announced on part of the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, because he believes that the sanctioned Iranian oil is being hoarded by China at cheap, and by temporarily unlocking the existing supply for the world, the United States will quickly bring about 140 million barrels of oil to global markets, expanding the amount of worldwide energy and helping them to relieve the temporary pressures on supply caused by Iran. In a sense, we will be using the Iranian barrels against Iran to keep the price down as we continue with Operation Epic Fury. So that seems to be, as far as the agenda, that now the US seems to be going ahead with regards to sanctioned Iranian oil. But here, the Indian refiners are now planning to resume buy Iranian oil, while refineries elsewhere in Asia are examining such a move after Washington has now temporarily removed the sanctions to alleviate an energy crunch that has now been caused by the US-Israel war. Let's get in a word with Srinjoy on this. Srinjoy, good afternoon. Does it bring about a much needed relief, especially when it comes to the Indian refiners? Because we've been continuing with our purchase of the Russian oil. Now sanctioned Iranian oil also seems to have been given a waiver.
Well, this is a tactical move, but it has to be seen whether it works or not. It's a very unusual move. Telling the enemy that you can sell your oil in the world market. We won't torpedo your tankers. That's the first thing. Now, why is this being done? It's being done to keep the oil prices down. Now, whether that works or not, we don't know. But already Russian oil is available in the market. That's fine. And countries like India would buy it now that the sanctions have been lifted. Not quite India, but Indian private sector firms would buy it. The other thing is that once the Russian oil is in the market, there is a hope that oil prices per barrel, crude oil prices per barrel will come down to from the current level of 112 or whatever it is. There is further hope that the Iranian oil will also help in that. But the Iranians say that they have very little, if any, oil of theirs floating around the world in tankers. So if that is so, how much of a help will that be? So it's a decision that has been taken by the United States, keeping in mind world oil prices, keeping in mind friendly countries and allies who have faced this oil threat. Japan being one, South Korea being another, countries like that. Many countries in Europe have no oil and desperately need the oil.
Yes.
And they are having to buy it at high prices. India, of course, has to buy 80% plus of its oil requirements. So as a result, this becomes an important problem for all these countries that are oil importers. Now
that seems to be, when it comes to the allegation that is now being leveled on part of the US, that mostly when it comes to Iranian oil, the biggest buyer being China, has been hoarding that cheap oil, and this waiver, however temporary, seems to have been announced when it comes to the sale of Iranian oil. Only that has been stranded at sea, not any fresh purchases. But now it seems that Iran has also issued a statement. Let's get you that breaking update of what we are learning after the US unsanctions Iranian oil, and Iran, however, has denied any floating oil claim, saying that there is no surplus crude which is available And Tehran has now called this move to be market signaling, saying that Iran has no floating or surplus crude available and there is no surplus crude for international markets. Well, let's get in a word from Mr. Pavlian as well. Sir, good afternoon. Is there any reassurance that you believe that is coming in from the US side, first when it comes to the waiver for the purchase of Russian oil and now when it comes to Iranian oil for the time being unsanctioned?
Good afternoon, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you. As I understand, some 2 days ago, American Secretary of Treasury said he was thinking of giving a waiver. Then